I'm here from the Central Massachusetts Regional Planning Commission, and I'm actually here covering for my colleague Ian McElwee, who I think many of you will have heard from previously or been involved with on this project and others in North Brookfield. He's unfortunately double booked tonight, so I'm filling in for him. And this project is a Town of North Brookfield project, and the town has engaged the Planning Commission to help administer the project on the town's behalf. And the folks from Leonard Engineering are really doing the bulk of the work on this project, and they'll be doing the bulk of the presentation as well tonight. So you'll hear from them in a few minutes. So just as by way of a little bit of background, I'll just give a little introduction here before we dive into the technical side of the program for tonight. So I should also say that this is being recorded by the North Brookfield Local Public Access Cable. So be aware that you are being recorded this evening. And I believe this will be posted later on the YouTube page that the local cable has. So it will be accessible to other folks in town who can't make it tonight. I also wanted to thank the project team in town. So we've had a number of folks on the town staff who've been involved with the project to date. I should thank Jim Nyberg, Jason Benoit from the Highway Department, and Rich Kennan from the Water Department and their teams for being involved with this project to date. So with that, welcome to the first public forum for the West Side Infrastructure Plan. This project is being funded through an FY 2019 Community Development Block Grant, which is federal money from the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development through the Massachusetts Department of Housing and Community Development. So it is federal money. This project was launched in 2018 when infrastructure planning and infrastructure improvements in the town overall, but especially near the town center, were prioritized in North Brookfield's community development strategy based on a number of previous studies and efforts in town based on input from residents over many years. I should say this also follows from an effort on the east side of the town center about 5 years ago, what we called the East Side and Little Canada Infrastructure Plan. That particular plan has led to close to $1 million in grants for construction of improvements in that part of town. So I'm guessing folks from the west side of the town center are familiar with the project that was done over on North Common Street a couple of years ago. That was funded coming out of a similar planning exercise under a previous grant. So that's kind of the roadmap that we're looking to follow here on the west side, is to go from planning with grant funds into design of infrastructure improvements into construction of those infrastructure improvements down the line. So I should say, one of the reasons we chose with the town's input to seek grant funding to do this project on the west side of the town center is that you're one of the more developed parts of town, one of the first developed parts of town that has any density, that you have some of the oldest infrastructure in the community, whether it's water, sewer, stormwater, roads, sidewalks. It is aging in that portion of town. So that's why your neighborhood is the focus of this project. And again, it kind of follows from the similar effort on the east side. So this planning exercise is expected to be complete later in the winter. And any subsequent design or construction is dependent on additional grant funding or other funding out there. So this particular project, it ends at the planning stage, and we're hoping that it will seed future endeavors from other sources. So the goals of the project overall, it's really to provide a roadmap for short and medium term infrastructure improvements in the west side planning area. We can get into what that planning area is shortly. So we hope that will help evaluate existing infrastructure systems in the area. It'll help us to develop conceptual designs for improvements in key spots within the planning area. And then what the folks at Leonard will produce as a final product is a planning document that's got prioritized actions and phased recommendations for implementation. So the idea is to take that document and use it to both for local planning as you go through your own internal planning processes, as well as a resource to help you go out and get external funding. So whether that is federal or state grant, an earmark from the state legislature. This plan will help you show that you've done the thinking that's required to make good decisions, to prioritize specific areas within your community, and then use that as the evidence to support your grant seeking. So the goals of the forum tonight are really to introduce the project to neighborhood residents, property owners, and other stakeholders, to present the findings of Lennar Engineering's field work that's been ongoing in the summer and the fall as they've been out there. If you live in the neighborhood, you may well have seen folks out there doing survey work over the last several months. We want to give residents and property owners a chance to provide local input on infrastructure issues and concerns that you're aware of. And I want to say that this is the first of 2 public events on this project. So there will be another opportunity to have some input and to hear what's going on with the project. The second event will focus on the recommendations of the plan. So today is really focusing on the initial findings of the field survey. And then next time around, we'll talk more about what the recommendations are coming out of the plan. So I do ask that folks keep their questions until the end if you can, or if Corey and Doug want to take questions at the end of certain sections, that's fine. And when you do have a question, please do let us know what your address is or what your affiliation is before you ask your question. And with that, I hand things off to Corey Broder and Doug Bush from Lennar Engineering, who's been the technical consultant for the project.
Good evening, folks. Again, yeah, my name is Corey Broder, Lennar Engineering. I'm also here with Doug Bush. And we are the civil engineers who kind of spearheading the planning study for this area. I'm going to share my screen in a moment. I had a PowerPoint presentation for the in-person, but should work the same here. Let me just open that up. Might be a delay, but can you see the document, Andrew? Yeah. All right. So again, this is this first slide here. It shows the project area. Obviously, it's bound by North Main Street, Bell Street, into Spring Street to the south and west. I think it's approximately 10,000 feet of roadway in the area. Obviously, you see that little notch out. It does. For this particular study, it did not include that commercial area down Summer Street. The bank is, Town Hall, and area. Again, we are from Lennar Engineering, Corey Broder and Doug Bush presenting. This is just a quick profile of our office. We have, we're based out of Auburn. We have other offices, Glastonbury stores in Connecticut, Winston, Connecticut. Small firms specialize in municipal wastewater, environmental work. And we can get right into the study now. So there were kind of 2 parts to the study. The first was the surface assessment. It's really what you can see. The roadway, the sidewalks, curb ramps, which is the ramps at intersections, at crosswalks, retaining walls, guardrail fencing. The second part, I'm sorry. Let's go to this. This map you see here is the actual assessments, the summary of the surface assessments in the area. The red colors indicate poor condition. So there's a lot of red on here. You see there's a little bit of green. I'll go through each area, kind of what we found in different streets. But as you can see, most of the streets are in poor condition, which isn't really anything new to everyone. Same with the sidewalks. There's a few roads, Summer and Spring Street, which are in good or fair condition. And we'll go through that as we go through the presentation. But different areas. We'll talk about what we would recommend be done for these roadways in different condition. So first, to go through the roadway conditions. The roadway conditions that we found in poor condition, Bachelor Drive, Chestnut Street, High Street, Maple Street, the section west of Chestnut, Mount Pleasant Street, and Prospect Street between Maple Street and Summer Street. Roadways we find in poor condition, we're typically going to recommend a full depth reconstruction of the roadway, which would likely include replacement of the full gravel base and new asphalt. So this slide is an example of a poor roadway on Bachelor Drive, probably the one that was rated the worst in the project area. As you can see, there are several cracks in the roadway, alligator cracking, which is an indication of a poor road base. Another view of Bachelor Drive, kind of you can see where there's been a lot of patchwork done. So anyway, this road is certainly in need of a full depth asphalt replacement. Now the next we've fair road conditions, which are kind of, there's it could go either way. It's going to at least require a full depth reclamation, where the asphalt would be ground up, mixed in with the gravel base, or it could require a full depth, replacement of gravel and asphalt. There are three roads, or two sections of road and one road. Mount Pleasant Place, which had some minor deficiency, and then Maple Street east of Chestnut, Prospect Street, Summer Street, and Spring Street. So these assessments were really based on just visual assessments with indications based on the cracking and what we can see at the surface. When you go through the design, as we propose different design phases, different when you prioritize, so there'll be different phases of this reconstruction design. And in the design phases, there'll likely be borings done to determine what the gravel base is and the depth of asphalt for each roadway. So these things can change, but in the planning stage right now, this is how we assess the roads. Here's an example: Maple Street east of Chestnut is some fares. Maybe hard to see in the video. There's a few lateral cracks and just some issues with grading. I think that this road probably is likely to be reclaimed. I don't think it may not need a full depth, but we'll see as the design phase progresses. And another one, Mount Pleasant Place. Some of the fair roads, they're probably somewhere between a fair and a good, where they don't need immediate action, but there are other things, depending on what we find in the design phase, and if you're going to actually end up replacing water lines, sewer lines, drainage, then the roadway is going to be already, excavated out, and at that point, you would need to do some sort of, reclamation, or at least a milling and overlay of that, where the surface would be patched over the trenches, and then you would overlay with just a top course of asphalt. But in the good roadway conditions, there's a few we found: Union Street, Summer Street, Spring Street, Bell Road. Good roadway conditions often would just be able to be. It's going to depend on what the full project entails, but they likely could just need. There's probably no immediate action needed, but again, with the utility improvements needed, it's likely some sort of asphalt surface repair would need to be done. So that's an example of Spring Street that shows in pretty good condition. Another shot of Spring Street there. On the sidewalk and curbing, I think all the sidewalks we found to be in poor condition and in need of immediate repair. There's a few streets without. They don't necessarily need them, but we just noted to improve pedestrian safety, some of the streets may benefit from additional sidewalks, at least on one side of Mount Pleasant Place, Bachelor Drive, and High Street. Here's an example of just what you're seeing: a typical sidewalk on Maple Street here at an intersection with obvious in disrepair, needed full replacement. And another one, you can see all the cracks and all the grass obviously growing through with the concrete curbing there. So we would need to replace it with, at least a 4 to 5 foot sidewalk and new curbing. Curb ramps, again, the curb ramps, that's, they go hand in hand with the sidewalks, but at each intersection where a crosswalk's required, they would need to meet accessibility, Massachusetts Architectural Access Board standards for slope and width and concrete with an 88 panel. And there are some streets that, due to the slopes in the roadway that we project not be able to fully meet. In that case, the designer may need to seek a variance from the AAB. So, examples, a couple of curb ramps here, Prospect, Summer. There's, I think this might be one of the ones that may require a variance based on the slope of the road. But you try to meet the slopes, you have to be 1 in 12 or 0.8% roughly on the slope. So I think the roadway slope exceeds that and would prohibit or at least make it difficult to meet the accessibility standards here. Okay, so our second part of the study was for utility assessments. And the utility assessments, we assessed the water conditions, sanitary sewer, and storm drain. The map that we put together here, again, was the same thing, kind of, it's simplified, red, green, and orange, green being good, orange being fair, red being poor, and, poor needing immediate replacement, within 5 or 10 years. And if possible, obviously, funding sources may not allow that, but, green, things are in good condition, and fair condition for, somewhere in between for the rest. But basically, first we did for what was actually the last in the timeline, but that we're talking about here is the water. We did hydrant flow tests for the whole project area. What we found is most of the areas do meet the flow requirements, but that for fire flow, but they don't meet the water main diameter requirement. So they all require, for fire mains, it requires 8-inch diameter, and the flow rate required is 750 gallons per minute. And most of them, I think there were a few that didn't meet it, but they also didn't meet the diameter. So at that point, if they don't meet that, we would recommend full replacement. And what we understand is the materials are all cast iron. I'm not sure exactly when they were replaced. The last time I understood that cast iron water mains were installed in the road roughly in the 1960s. So everything's at least 50 years old. So I think in the whole project area, we would recommend replacement of the water mains and services. Sanitary sewer, what we did for sanitary sewer assessments, we did a topside inspection, which just means we did not enter the manholes. We along with the sewer department assistants, inspected each manhole from the service. And on other days, we did video inspection throughout the project area of the mains of the sewer. Did not inspect the sewer services to each house, but they were inspected from the main so we can see if there were issues with the services at the mains. And actually, in this project area, the sewer department in the town of North Brookfield did a lot of lining of the mains with a CIP lining, which is like where they go through and they don't excavate it out. It's a non-excavatable repair. So they line the inside of the pipe to reduce or eliminate the infiltration into the pipes, which it looks like for the most part they're holding up for the repairs. So they did invest a lot of money into sanitary sewer. At the issues that we found were at the actual laterals at the taps at the mains, where you could still see some infiltration, some root intrusion, and cracks at those areas. So even if the sewer mains were lined, it may be a good opportunity replace the sewer laterals to the property line when these projects are done. Storm drainage.
Corey, can I just jump in very quickly? I just, for folks who might not be aware, that when you say laterals, you mean the connections from the mains to the homes and other
Yeah,
places.
exactly. It's the flow. So, when you flush your toilet or water goes down your sink, it's where it comes. That's where the sewer goes in the main your house.
Thank you.
Yep. And the storm drainage, what we did some additional video inspection for the storm drainage, which can be eliminated because things tend to be blocked in sewer mains where you can't access by camera. But we got as much as we can, and there's definitely a lot going on with the storm drains in this area where a lot of stuff goes through backyards, and there's culverts, and there's still some things we don't quite know what's going on under the road, but we do know that most of the catch basins or inlets don't have sumps and needed for water quality in the area. For the most part, the pipes are in okay condition. There's definitely a lot that need repair, and I think mostly a realignment of the system to get water out of yards. I think the culverts would be best suited to go into public way, so we can kind of reduce any potential flooding issues or drainage issues that exist in private property right now. So to summarize, basically most of the roadways, you saw there was a lot of reds and oranges, and all the sidewalks and curbing and curb burns are in need of replacement. In this project area, I think the storm drain system kind of goes hand in hand with the roadway. The roadway has a poor or subpar storm drainage system. It tends to deteriorate the roadway faster. So I think the storm drain system certainly needs upgrades, and also to improve the water quality. The sanitary sewer, I think there's definitely some areas that need some replacement in sections, definitely at the laterals where we see issues, and where there's going to be some repairs needed, possible replacement and lining of other of the manholes, and spot repairs in areas. But the water distribution system mains and service laterals are all in need of replacement in the project area. And I guess so. I kind of touched on it, but after what we're going to do now, it's already in progress, is and Andrew discussed what our finished product would be: a phased and prioritized improvements of the area, where we'll come up with cost estimates on the planning level, because there still is some stuff that will need to be worked through during each design. But that is where we're at right now, and I'm happy to take any questions. Between myself and Doug, who was in the field most of the time coordinating that.
Corey, does it make sense to maybe unshare your screen for a minute, just so we can see everybody? And I'm curious, while Corey's doing that, how many people who are here tonight live within what we're calling the West Side project area? All right, so a good number of folks, it looks like. So that's good.
Hi, this is Bruce Arnold. I've got a quick question for Corey, I guess. So, Corey, what's the time frame of having the full reports done for the town to start considering?
I think our goal is to have at least this planning document drafted and presented by the end of March. I mean, again, this is a planning study. This is not an in-depth design at this point. It's just going to identify different projects and prioritize them. I mean, right now, I think I could say that the priority would probably be, the roadways and drainage, but we'd have to start at the low area on Spring Street and work our way up to improve the drainage as you go up, because that needs to be repaired before we tie in and make improvements on the upstream. But that's just our recommendation. But
Your goal is to get your report summarized by March. And then at that point, is it necessary to have all the little bits and pieces of it costed out?
At that point, we'll have costs, cost estimates on a planning level, which, they're like, again, they may change because we don't have all the information we would have if we were doing a design on each roadway. But, they do often end up being close, but what we would do is present what we would say this would be phase 1, phase 2. It really depends on available funding. I believe, the grant can change, where you can't apply for it every year, maybe, I don't know, but, the amount you can apply for varies. There are funding sources, obviously, but, and we'll probably, try to use as much of the block grant money that's available for these projects.
Yeah, if I could just jump in briefly.
Sure.
So what Corey and Doug and my colleague Ian are diving into now, or have started looking at, is how do the prioritized projects fit with the potential grant sources that are out there? So the idea is to kind of figure out, okay, if we want to do, say we wanted to do all of Mount Pleasant Street, that maybe that's too much for one grant. So how do we split that into 2 phases so that we can go after it that way and save the town from having to use local resources on that kind of a thing? So there's kind of a back and forth on this about, what are the priorities? What do we want to do versus what can we actually pay to do? What resources are out there? And then breaking the projects up into the pieces that we can actually fund. So the estimates that are being developed they're really designed for the purpose of seeking future grants for design and construction later on. It may take 4 or 5 years to get money to build a particular project. We all know that prices are going to creep up over that time. So we're really just trying to get kind of a little bit better than an order of magnitude estimate so we have a ballpark idea of what things are going to cost. But as Corey said, there are always some details to be worked out when you get into the real design work, and that will help you refine an estimate at that point. So this is really, again, the ballpark.
Are we going to be seeking additional grant funding and having to write on parts of that, or is that already identified?
That's really what this process is about, is trying to identify, what are the priorities, which potential funding sources could go best with which projects that we've identified. And in a lot of cases, the Planning Commission is happy to keep working with the town to go out and seek these resources. Some programs are well within the town government's capacity to go after. There's a whole gamut of programs out there, and there are different ways of approaching each of them.
Can I ask a question, please?
Sure.
My name's Jim Metcalf. I live at 31 High Street, right on the corner of High and Mount Pleasant. And this is a very optimistic project, and I'm not sure how we can pull it all off, but I hope it doesn't become a homemade project where we just try to do it, in town. On our lot, we have very severe problems with water, stormwater, coming off Mount Pleasant Street onto that corner. So we've had to build berms up, on the edge of the lot. And one of my questions would be, would the surface, road surface be raised at all? Because that will cause more problems for us. Or will there be storm drains in the area to pick up the runoff? And you probably don't have the answers right now, but that's an issue. The second issue, you mentioned the possibility of sidewalks. These streets are so narrow. Are you anticipating land taking
I mean, it's something, we don't all require sidewalks. We just identified roads that may.
Okay, I mean, now
or
it's
that-
required
I mean,
for,
that's something they'll have to work out in design, but,
okay,
I don't, I mean, if not, if it's not necessary, I don't think that would be the.
right. I mean, these are, for the most part, they're quiet streets.
Yeah.
Brings up my final question is the High Street, Mount Pleasant Street is a shortcut for traffic, mostly going to the school or up, north side of town. And so it's a racetrack. These get up to 40 miles an hour and right now on the road as bad as it is. So if we have a nice wide level road, I can see them getting up to 50 up to that corner. And as safety is a real issue, there's a lot of kids now on bikes and stuff, young kids. In the planning, I don't know if you can anticipate or not, but is there any way that either speed bumps or some sort of speed reduction techniques can be utilized, because it is a shortcut and the traffic is very fast early in the morning and then in the afternoon going probably to pick up kids or something. So again, it's not, you don't have an answer now, but that to be built into the plan.
It's good to know. Yeah, I mean, we certainly, after every road is paved, it tends to be, increased speed if it's already an issue. We can't change the driver's behavior, but certainly something we can note and look into in the planning level to, when that road is on the docket, it's something that can be considered. So at least it's noted.
Thank you.
Hey, Corey, I have a question now.
Okay.
So I live right down the road, actually, from the last speaker. I live at the corner of Chestnut and Mount Pleasant Street. And there's no surface drainage existing on that road, at the top of the road anyway. I think when you get down to the bottom of Chestnut Street, there are some storm drains. But we have a real issue up at the top because there's no surface drainage seasonally. Some springs that seem to show up every year, and it ends up, as you alluded to earlier, it ends up deteriorating the roadway probably faster than it would otherwise. So my question is, with what you guys are looking at for the storm drainage, are you looking at just tackling what's already there and replacement, or are you looking at it from sort of a new perspective of, along the sides of each road?
I think usually you would look at the full picture. It wouldn't just be a replacement. If that's what's necessary. I think, if you have issues with groundwater, like I said, you do soil evaluations prior, as part of your design. You can do things like sub-drainage under the roadway to take the water out of that and out of the gravel base, and especially during the spring and fall. But certainly, I think the intent is not just to replace, because, that wouldn't solve all the issues. I think you'd have to look at the whole picture and make improvements where possible.
Okay.
Thanks, Corey. Do we have any other questions? Are there people who think maybe that something was missed in the assessment out in the field? Were there any other issues that we didn't hit on? Or questions about next steps in the planning process? We're happy to talk about any of that.
Hi, Corey, Andrew. Thank you for your time. Jeremiah Belanger. I'm at the corner of Summer and High Street. I'd like to second Jim's perception on speed. People do come around this corner quite quickly, and there is quite a bit of traffic on this road. I wouldn't be looking forward to a smoother road because that would increase traffic. I kind of appreciate that it's a little bit rougher. That being said, on my High Street side, the sidewalks that are in front of my house on my property, I'm not sure. They're actually concrete, and they're integrated into my concrete driveway. I'm not sure if that was taken into account.
I mean, when they replace sidewalks, or driveways or roads, they end up having to tie into the driveways. So you would typically replace the same material of your driveway, not as an apron to tie in. If there are any grade changes in the roadway, you usually only a few feet, but have to tie into it. It doesn't mean the sidewalks will remain concrete. Typically, if they replace something on public private property, it would need to be, replaced in kind.
Yeah, I'm not sure. One half does the other, and I know this is probably for the planning stage of things a little bit further along. I'm more concerned that it's just actually connected to the driveway and integrated to it.
Yeah, I mean that's something to note. I mean, it's certainly like when it's probably more suitable when they're actually doing the design. What in the planning stage, what we would account for is replacement of that material. A certain amount of that driveway would be replaced. Just not much. But it would be replaced, the concrete, and
it's in good shape. So it's one half does the other. I just was curious.
Yeah.
It's just noted.
Yep. I mean, there's a lot of factors. Like I said, the roadway grade could change a little bit. Maybe there's no crown in the road and it needs a crown. You got to improve the drainage to get better cross slope. So, it's not likely that there'll be some changes. So that it depends. But it's good to know.
Another question I have is I may have one of the unforeseens during rain and spring, the stormwater runoff. In my basement, it's been there for as long as I can remember. It's probably been there since the house was built. I have a pipe that comes in and then water runs across the floor in the corners and then goes out. It's fine. It goes in, it goes out. Do I have any assurances that the out water will still continue to go out and it won't be blocked off?
You said you have a pipe coming in?
Yeah, there's water coming in and out on the perimeters of my basement.
Well, I mean, that's hard to say exactly what the source of that. I don't know, what's coming in, but I mean, if there's a connection, that's found in the roadway, I mean, it's certainly something that will need to be tied in the roadway, but it's certainly something. I mean, there's going to be a lot of unknowns when typically you don't see everything until you actually open the road up. So
it looks like about a 4-inch clay pipe that goes out. So it handles a pretty substantial amount of volume.
A 4-inch pipe from your basement?
Yes.
Know which way it goes out?
It's not it's not a sewer pipe, or is it?
No, not a sewer pipe. I have town sewer in a different location.
And is it in the floor, or is it in the?
Yeah, it's two sides, both the perimeters of the basement, and they're in the floor. Like I said, I've lived with it forever. Water goes in and goes out. I just want to make sure it continues to go out.
Okay. I mean, that's something, we'd have to coordinate with the local, highway and sewer departments. Typically floor drains are tied into sanitary, but, again, we'll have to coordinate. And again, if the road is slated to be designed, that'll be something, it's hard to say if that actually goes out to the street or not.
It goes somewhere.
Yeah, right. I mean,
and it's a substantial amount of water that goes out. It's got to go to something.
Yeah, and I think what Corey is touching on, there was a lot of the details like that would come out in the design phase. So, let's say that we can help the town go out and get a grant to build, to design, one of the priority projects. We definitely have a community meeting like this, but more oriented to specific details to try to gather that kind of information before anything is put onto the paper for the construction. So we definitely want to hear about that stuff, but even in more detail once we get into a design phase.
I have a question. Deb Arnold, we live at the corner of Summer and Prospect Street. We do have a significant water problem from stormwater, but my question is, perhaps to Corey, you were saying that they would start at the lowest point and go to the highest point. That just seems, can you explain why you wouldn't go from the top down to fix water that's flowing downwards?
Well, typically, if there are some areas that are, I mean, from my understanding, at the low point too, there's actually a broken pipe. You know, there's some issues down there. There's some things that would need to be repaired before tying into it. That's typically how you would start and repair drainage. You know, you start at the low point and then make the improvements as you go up, so you have a system that you're tying into is already brought up, you know, up to a higher standard. So doesn't mean that's how it will be done. And it's possible maybe some of those repairs at the low point could be done through other avenues, and then we can focus on some of the other roadways. But something that's typically, you know, I think those repairs as far as drainage goes into low point would need to be done first.
I'm just thinking that you'll probably have a lot of surprises when whoever does the work digs in. So that was just my question.
Oh, sure. Yeah. I mean, that's not uncommon. You know, once you open the road, it can be a completely different story. Like I said, you can only see so much when you do, you know, camera inspections and try to find record drawings that don't really exist.
Mm-hmm.
It's, you know, you do the best you can for what you can see, and then in design, you know, that's one thing, and then constructing. Once you open it up, you certainly can find surprises.
I think one thing to note about the outfall at Spring Street, that's the only pipe that handles all the water from Spring to Mount Pleasant. When I was out there with the highway department, they were having some pretty decent flooding during some, you know, relatively larger storm events. You know, I believe that pipe is broken. It's also, we tried to video it, and it's blocked by significant root systems. So that'd be one thing. That'd probably be, you know, if it was allowed within the grant to you know, that has to take all the water from all those streets, and then that would have to be repaired prior to any other repairs on any streets.
Where does the water go from there?
It goes from Spring, west of Union. There's an outfall catch basin or drain manhole. Goes from Spring to Evergreen, and then goes across to, I forget, there's another street, and then to Bates, I believe it is, and then across where it eventually meets up with a stream down there.
Okay.
That pipe is pretty crucial. It handles most of the water that, if not all the water that in that drainage system area.
Okay. Thanks.
My understanding is that pretty much all the water in the central part of town is in either one drainage system west of North Main or another one east, kind of along the Grove Street axis. So it's an awful lot of water coming down into those two systems heading south, you know, outside of the town center area. So it's kind of I wouldn't say a unique system, but it is a tricky one, because if you have any problems on either of those two major drainage corridors, then you're going to have, you know, problems upstream from there, moving the water to where it needs to go. All right, anybody else have other questions, other concerns, other things you want to make sure that we're noting before Doug and Corey dive into the final stages of the plan?
So if you're looking for input, we've provided that to the town for our property. Where does that need to also go?
I believe we were given that correspondence. I think that was given from the selectmen to Central Mass Planning and then conveyed to us as well. So it will be something that's considered in the planning, you know, stage right now, at least. You know, the drainage. I think that was one of the sections of road we would possibly, you know, have to realign to get some of the water, instead of going through the yard, into the roadway and then realigned.
So is there a way to double check and verify that you got all that information? Should I
mean-
just drop you a quick note or?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I can communicate through Ian, I believe.
Yeah, let me, I'll put
Several
my colleague Ian's email address in the chat box so that anybody who has other questions you think of later, other things you want to make sure that we pass along to the team from Leonard or the town departments, you can send that to Ian and he'll pull it all together. And in your case, he'll double check that he's already sent it along.
Okay. Thank you, guys.
Sure. There's Ian's address there. So I guess just touching a little bit more on the next steps before we adjourn if there aren't any more questions. So really the last part of the plan here is trying to make sure that we are on the same page with the town staff who work in these areas about what the different priority locations are within the west side. So Corey, do we have a set number of these spots that we want to look at as for like conceptual design and additional estimate, or is it more of a blanket thing across the area? Again, that's not something I've been involved with because this is Ian's
No,
project.
I think it was something like it was supposed to be not less than 5 projects or something along that 5 or 6, I believe. But it may take more depending on funding, obviously, or so we'll develop projects, I think, based on what typically, what North Brookfield's grant allocation is, and then identify if there's any other needs, avenues of funding.
Okay, just so folks know, the vast majority of the grants that can be used for infrastructure are competitive grants. And North Brookfield has had a pretty good success rate of applying for these kinds of grants, but there's no promise that that any of these are going to come through in a particular year. So that's something that at the Planning Commission, with some of the programs, we work closely with the town to try to plot out a sequence of, which grants are available for which kinds of projects, which projects are the best fit for certain grant programs. And we do try to have a rational sequence to it, but sometimes the logic behind it is more about what funding is available, and it's not always something where we can do the thing that's, technically speaking, the highest priority first. Sometimes we have to take things a little bit out of sequence, but again, it's in some ways it's about chasing the funding first, and then kind of working within the priorities as best we can through that lens of funding.
Can I ask one question along the lines of funding? Recently, the sewer department got a mega amount of money for, I know it was like $5 million for requirements, but I think they got funded at something like 10 or 12 or 13 million. Is that money earmarked for this project?
I don't know. Jim, are you still on the line? Okay, I know Jim from the sewer department was here at the beginning.
Yes, sir, I am.
Is that something that you can help us with?
I can answer the question and state that funding that was requested from the town was not earmarked for that particular project. That funding request was earmarked for facility upgrades required by DEP and EPA for the continued function of the facility for the town.
That was only 5 million of what was the total? 13?
$13 million was what was appropriated by the town, which is to be used for design and construction of upgrades to the facility to meet the EPA mandated 0.1 phosphorus limitations.
Which was 5 million.
No, sir, I'm not quite sure where 5 million comes in.
That's what it takes to meet the upgrade requirements.
The town appropriated 13 million to meet the requirements for everything that the facility will need for this. You may be thinking of the overall cost after assumed grants and loans, but the town appropriated 13.1 million at vote.
I understand what we appropriated. We did a bump over the, what, 2.5 or something. I just want to know what the money is used for because, you know, my assumption is it might be being used for this project that we're talking about tonight because it's such a huge amount of money.
Jim, this particular, the improvements that Corey and Doug are looking at here, this would be funded separately from what's been authorized already. So the idea here is to, at least from my understanding, is to attempt wherever possible to go ahead and get grant funding to implement the recommendation.
Okay. All right. My question has been answered then. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Well, if anybody has a final question or comment they wanted to get in, now is the time. If not, I'll wish you all a good evening and hope everybody stays safe in the snow tomorrow. All right. Well, thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Have a good night.
Thank you.